Picture this. You wake up one morning. The government has already decided what you'll eat, who you can trust, even the thoughts in your own head. Your best friend? Gone. Your favorite book? Banned. Your own mind? No longer yours. Sound like a nightmare? For millions in Germany, 1933, 1945. This wasn't a story. It was breakfast, lunch, and every breath. But here's what history class won't tell you. The real tragedy wasn't only the Holocaust or the war, it was how fast everyday life collapsed. Neighbors, teachers, shopkeepers, trapped. A living hell of fear, hunger, and silence. Today, we uncover the untold stories of what it truly meant to survive Nazi rule. By the end of this video, you won't just value freedom, you'll fear life without it. When Hitler seized power in 1933, most Germans thought life would get better. The country was broken. Unemployment was sky high. People were starving. Hope was nearly dead. Nazis promised jobs, food, and pride. But here's the twisted reality. Pride turned into chains of fear. The nation became a prison. Imagine waking up in a country fully controlled. Saying the wrong thing could make you disappear. Children came, home with propaganda, terrifying their parents. But parents couldn't say a word. This wasn't just politics or war, it was the destruction of normal life. Grocery store visits became dangerous. Conversations with neighbors were risky. Even bedtime stories became a death sentence. How did ordinary people survive? And how did they lose freedom and self? Let's start with something as simple as food. You know that feeling when you're really hungry? You open your fridge and there's nothing inside. Now imagine that emptiness. Not for one night, but for years. By 1939, Germans were living on ration cards. Meat, barely 2 pounds a month. Butter, just a few ounces. Coffee became so rare. Fake versions brewed from acorns and chicory. But here's what's truly heartbreaking. Mothers went to bed hungry for their children. Families gathered around tiny portions. Portions so small they looked like scraps. And it got worse. Much worse. During the war years, only 1,500 calories a day. That's less than for a small child today. People became obsessed with food, dreaming about it, talking about it constantly, even stealing from neighbors to survive. Nazis had a sick solution. Hunger was called a badge of honor. Starving for the fatherland was duty. Can you imagine being that hungry, told you should be proud of it? Clothing was just as brutal. By 1943, special permits for shoes. People wore same clothes for years. Children outgrew clothes with no replacements. Winters became a nightmare. Coal was rationed, electricity cut off. Families huddled in freezing apartments, wearing every piece of clothing to stay warm. Now here's where things get really terrifying. Nazis didn't just control your body, they invaded your thoughts. Every conversation became a potential trap. Your mailman could be a spy. Your child's teacher almost certainly was. Neighbors reported on each other, even for complaining about the weather. The Gestapo kept files on millions. They knew who you talked to, where you went, what you bought. Most info came from ordinary people. Friends and family turned each other in. Imagine a world where you couldn't trust anyone. A joke about Hitler could cost your life. A knock at 3 a.m. Even your children could report you. People developed learned helplessness. They stopped expressing opinions. They stopped asking questions. They just existed. Souls slowly withered inside. Many didn't resist because of terror. Hunger, cold, fear made survival the only focus. Moral courage became a luxury. Propaganda was everywhere. Every newspaper carried it. Loudspeakers blasted it daily. After 1,000 echoes, lies sounded like truth. Let's talk about the destruction of families. Nazis wanted to steal children's minds. At age 6, kids entered youth groups. By 10, they joined Hitler Youth or League of German Girls. Picture this. Your 8-year-old calls you a bad parent because you don't hang a Nazi flag. Teenagers proudly reported on neighbors. Daughters told their only purpose was babies for Reich. Parents watched children become strangers. Kids valued Hitler over family. Some were rewarded for spying on parents. Parents faced a devastating choice. Teach kids critical thinking, risk death, or let them join system to stay safe. Women faced their own nightmare. Nazis said, Kinder, Küche, Kirche. That defined a woman's existence. Professional. Women were forced out. Only duty was making babies. If you couldn't, you became a target. Families cracked under pressure. Divorce rates soared. Suicide climbed. Mental illness spread like wildfire. But in Nazi Germany, pain wasn't medical. Psychological pain was seen as weakness. Now let's step into the darkest shadow of all. What Nazi rule did to the human mind. Imagine waking up every day in fear. One wrong word could destroy everything. That's not living. That's dying inside. People developed mass PTSD. They couldn't sleep. They jumped at every sound. They whispered even at home, as if the walls had ears. After years of torture, many stopped feeling. Easier than constant terror. They became walking zombies. Some resisted in small ways, listening to foreign radio in secret, hiding Jewish friends in basements, spreading whispered rumors of camps, knowing if caught, families would die. For every act of resistance came defeat. Principles died one compromise at a time. People became someone they never imagined. Saddest stories came from diaries. Survivors wrote about feeling like strangers, missing the person they used to be, wondering if they'd ever feel human again. Children grew up thinking nightmare was normal. No memory of freedom. Fear and hunger became life. To them, tragedy was simply life. Here's the moment that changes everything. Hunger, fear, silence, betrayal, not accidents. They were the design. Nazis understood something terrifying. To control people, you control life itself. Their breakfast, their bedtime stories, their hopes, their dreams. Every empty stomach was victory for totalitarianism. Every whisper was democracy dying. Every child taught hate was freedom murdered. By 1944, Allied bombs rained on Germany. Many realized they traded humanity for survival, and ended with neither. The promised greatness turned to shadows, ghosts haunting their own lives. Streets once full of laughter fell silent. It didn't happen overnight. It happened through tiny compromises. Less freedom here, more surveillance. There. One neighbor vanished. One book burned. Until people woke up in hell, and they couldn't remember how they got there. So, what can we learn from these stories? Freedom isn't automatic. We must defend it daily, in our conversations and choices, in refusing to let fear silence us. Those under Nazi rule weren't monsters. They were teachers, parents, students. People once said it could never happen here until it did. The tragedy wasn't only those who died, but also those who survived and lost themselves, who chose security over freedom, silence over truth, survival over humanity. When you complain about government, remember them. When you disagree with your neighbor, remember them. When you teach kids to think, remember those parents. The price of freedom is vigilance and courage to stay human, because the moment we stop fighting, we've already lost what makes life worth living. Never forget, never again, never believe it can't happen to you.